Welcome to La Triqueterie. Amazing venue.
Yeah. Isn't this a cool space? Yeah. Yeah, let's get started. Welcome, everybody. All right, my name is Christian Montoya. That is, in fact, me up on the screen. And I'm also very excited to introduce my colleague.
Hi, I'm Eric Bichard. I'm the MetaMask DevRel manager, and I work with the SDK and API.
Yeah, so we're really excited to have you today. And Eric's going to kick us off with the agenda.
Yeah, so we have a full schedule for you guys all the way until 5 o'clock today. We're going to start out with Web3 UX, upgrading the experience, leveling up the game. Then we have a special presentation by a special MetaMask person, I'll just say that. Then we have Next Gen UX, how to keep up with the new crypto use cases. In the afternoon, we have Perfect Match. So this will be after the lunch. Perfect Match, content and design in Web3 UX. Then enabling innovation, how we turn every developer into a Web3 maxi. What's new at MetaMask, and there's a lot of things that are new, so stick around for that. How Web3 apps are going seamless and secure. We have more. Taking MetaMask beyond Ethereum. Social experiments in Web3, pushing past the growth barriers in Web3. And then finally, a fireside chat with Joe Lubin and Dan Finlay.
Hopefully you know who they are. All right, so why MetaMask Spotlight? Why do we call it that? So the idea of MetaMask Spotlight is that we want to shine a light on an important topic in our ecosystem and on the important players in this ecosystem who are making Web3 better for everyone. So all the wonderful people that we work with who are building amazing applications and experiences and pioneering and innovating in this space. So we're very excited for all of the speakers that we have today. We have wonderful panelists who are going to be talking about some really exciting topics and sharing their knowledge with you. And it's going to be a wonderful opportunity for you to learn from them. So this is actually our second MetaMask Spotlight event. So we had our first one ever at ETH Denver earlier this year. And these are a couple of pictures from that event. And that spotlight was all about security. So we were highlighting many different companies and developers in the space who are building amazing security products to help users and protect them from phishing and scams and various hacks. And we were able to showcase all of the amazing work that's being done and how MetaMask and all of our partners are pioneering in keeping users safe. So that was a wonderful event. We had maybe 200 people at any given time, lots of great talks, and everything was recorded. So if you want to check out on our YouTube channel, you can check out all of the talks from that event.
MetaMask Dev on YouTube.
Yes. But today is bigger and better, so we've decided to expand our programming and have an even bigger space and more panelists, more talks.
Bigger shirts.
Yes, bigger shirts. You can see his shirt is bigger. All right, so really excited to be bringing you our biggest MetaMask Spotlight ever. So why did we call it Building On-Chain? So everyone's been asking, well, we have all of this infrastructure, right? Everybody's building layer 1s, layer 2s, all kinds of different data platforms and restaking and all these different things. We have all this infrastructure. Where are the applications? Where are the use cases? Today is all about what you can do on-chain. You want to hear from people who are building applications? They're here today. You can learn about what people are actually building and the things that users can do on-chain. So you get to hear from the people building those apps. And you're going to get to learn about all of the new technologies that make these apps more user-friendly and seamless and secure, and how we're onboarding users into fascinating new use cases. And you're going to get advice on how to make your own apps more successful. So I'm just curious to see, show of hands, how many developers do we have in the room? All right, very cool. And then for the rest of you, how many of you are builders? Maybe marketing, user experience, design, biz dev? Yeah, very cool, very cool. And raise your hand if you're actively working on a product right now. Maybe you're building a new product. All right, all right. So you're in the right place, okay? And you're going to learn about design, about how to make really fun experiences, how to onboard users, all the different technology that's available to you, how to explore new blockchains and ecosystems. And we're going to be sharing all of that with you, and we're really excited to have this programming for you today. So with that, I think we're ready to kick off the first panel.
Let's go. There we go. All right, so we have upgrading the experience. Sorry, my throat. Upgrading the experience, leveling up the game. We have Robbie Young, Jacob C. ETH, Francis Bacon, Corey Jansen, and our moderator, Yeho Huang.
Yeah, come on stage.
Good morning. How are we? Woo! Thanks for coming. Especially, no, this is a panelist seat. Yeah, so let's get started with introductions, starting with Jacob and ending with Corey, what you do and what company you work for.
Hi, I'm Jacob. I'm founder of Hyperplay. We are a Web3 game store. We actually have our roots in the MetaMask team. I was previously in MetaMask, and I had seen that there's a huge gaming use cases, but the user experience around bringing wallets into the games was not where we wanted it to be. So I started something in partnership with MetaMask called Hyperplay.
Hi, everybody. I'm Robbie Young. I'm the CEO of Animoca Brands. We make games, and we are a very active investor in the Web3 space, as well as an investor in MetaMask.
Francis, I am head of economy and revenue strategy over at Shrapnel. We're a AAA first-person shooter building on Avalanche.
I'm Corey Jansen. I am the staff content designer at MetaMask, and I feel like content design is still something people don't really understand. So content design is basically a part of UX, and it's designing with words. So anytime you see like really any word in an experience, that's content design. So yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I'm looking down at my phone. I'm not being distracted because I have my questions here. So let's get started talking about what it's like building a game app on Web3. What are some pros and cons you've experienced?
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of cons. There's some pretty good pros though, like in terms of the open economy and the fact that we get so much more freedom to explore like new and innovative game design principles, and like whether it comes to players actually attaining real value, being able to leave your ecosystem, like interoperability and things of that nature. But on the con side, there's quite a long list. For example, we're on an Avalanche subnet, has around 300 TPS, and we have to pre-mint like millions of assets for our players, for example, and that takes days, months, sometimes. So our head of blockchain often calls himself the largest weapons manufacturer and distribution network in the world because he's printing so many of these assets, and it takes so long for them to be created. So I think there's quite a few things on the building side where it's like, okay, you have these limitations, but you need these things for the game to function. Like, how do you go and do that? Which you then have to get innovative solutions where we spend months basically preparing for players to even come to the game. And I think this is a huge issue that we need to start kind of getting there to address. Avalanche hopefully will have something by the end of the year that will be around 100,000 TPS, which would massively kind of solve that. But coming into this and having that level of technical limitation and trying to expand and get millions of players is almost impossible. Like, you're never going to be able to get millions of players with just like 300 transactions per second. So that's like one of the core things that we're dealing with right now.
Right, and TPS is transactions per second.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
I'll say I think the Web3, our space in Web3 gaming is still very early, and that's not news to really anybody who's tried any of the games. They're very primitive today in most instances. There's some really great titles. Shrapnel is actually leading some pretty extraordinary work, and people should go play their game. But I think that a lot of times people onboard into it and they see the gap between where the previous generations of games were and where we are today. And a lot of that has to do with where the level of infrastructure is. So the adoption arc for building really great user experiences is still really early. And so there's a lot of need to, there's a range of problems from the protocol layer and the transaction throughput. But there's also things like the wallet interaction between the game and the user, and the ability of the user to carry their assets and their wallet interoperably across games, carry the forms of Web3 utility, like whether those be marketplaces or swaps or quests into the games themselves. So that's what we're trying to do with Hyperplay. We've built a Web3 game store that has an overlay similar to the Steam overlay, and we use our overlay tech to allow the player to carry their wallet and assets into the games so that they can use their wallet in native games interoperably between games. We think that Web3 gaming has to be a lot more than just secondary markets. It has to be reputation, portable reputation, interoperable assets between games and marketplaces, and extensible game worlds where third parties can build new functionality on top of the contracts of the origin game. And so we see a range of games that are, some that are off-chain, some that are heavily fully on-chain. There's people like Pirate Nation who are really leading the way to build an immersive game that feels like a standard mobile game but is a fully on-chain game. And so I would really recommend for anyone building in this space to try a diversity of games and a diversity of the experiments that people are doing.
I think I would echo your comments about diversity. I mean, we have lots of. Sorry. Yeah, I think we can only have one on at a time. We have lots of different games, everything from mobile free to play. Everything from mobile free to play to browser-based games, et cetera, like single, AA games. And I think that the kind of experiences that we can present with Web3 infrastructure have a couple of limitations. I think for us, we've always focused on ownership and digital ownership as being sort of one of the key tenets of Web3, and so that's very important that must be on-chain. But we made design decisions, particularly in a lot of our earlier products, like Sandbox, for example, which we started building back in 2018, that we were going to make gameplay off-chain because we felt that it was more responsive to the needs of gamers, and that as long as the ownership was on-chain, and latterly reputation nowadays, as we're starting to do more decentralized ID, that those things are important so that we can at least just strike a balance with what the infrastructure is currently capable of in terms of being able to give a good user experience. But I do think that one issue that's really come to the fore in the last year or so in terms of how to onboard users is this trade-off between self-custody and users not really concerned who holds their assets on their behalf. And I think once we get away from a philosophy that users must have self-custody and we allow them to have options, it gives us a lot more flexibility in making an onboarding experience that might be more familiar.
And speaking of Web3 UX and design choices, Corey, I know you don't build the games on-chain, coming from MetaMask, but I was wondering if you could give your 2 cents on content design and the importance of it.
Yes, I can. I think it actually applies to a lot of what you all just said about the interoperability and how things are extensible and you build on top of one thing on top of the other, but you have to really consider is this going to feel like a disjointed experience for that user who's like, okay, I'm here, and now I'm here, and wait, why are these two things saying completely different, using different words to me, using different vocabulary, this one's saying sign, this one's saying something else entirely. So I think there's really a need to consider from a broader perspective, the whole experience of what a user will be doing in the game, beyond just your game that you've built. Like you said, it's the overlay, it's everything that sort of builds that world for the user, and it can really create a more cohesive experience that also then, frankly, seems more valuable and more refined, and I think would have a better chance of competing with traditional Web 2 games. It seems like a very competitive space, and these are all incredible products and super cool, ideas, but if people aren't going to understand how to use them properly, then it's kind of all for nothing.
Thank you. And sticking to the theme of usability, since we're talking about upgrading the experience for our users, what are some usability choices your team had to make to maybe focus on growth, retention, any compromises you've made? Let's, whoever wants to start, or I can call on someone.
Okay, I can start since I mentioned it already, but I think custodial wallets definitely help. But I think it's also about thinking about your design choices in terms of your onboarding path for new users also being an education process for them. Because I think one of the key things that we've observed, because we have also a lot of portfolio companies that we've invested in gaming specifically, so we have a lot of data and observations, is that if you abstract too much Web3 to the background, right? There's a school of thought from Web2 developers coming into Web3 where you don't want to see any Web3, you just want it to be invisible in the background. And I think one of the problems with that approach is that then also consumers don't appreciate what the application or the game is capable of, because you've made invisible all of the benefits of it. And so when they experience those benefits, they don't realize, because as gamers, we kind of assume we own stuff, because until Web3, we were told by all the companies that sold it to us, including us, in fair disclosure, that we owned stuff, but we didn't really own stuff. So now that we do, you need to drum that into people and remind them, look, you own stuff, and guess what? These are all the things you can do with it now that you own it. Let us highlight that to you. So there needs to be some friction, because I think the crazy retention rates that we see in sort of early Web3, you know, everybody who's been here until now, is because the onboarding was so hard, right? We're really committed. If we made it into crypto, we're here. We're not going anywhere, because there was a learning curve. And that learning curve was part of what's made it sticky for us as well.
You know, so we've tried to solve a lot of the same problems that Robbie's talking about on custody and onboarding and things like that. We did approach things a little bit differently. So like we don't have a custodial wallet solution in Hyperplay, but we approach it through patterns of progressive onboarding. So when you set up Hyperplay, the user can sign up with an email address or a wallet. The users who choose to sign up with an email address will soon, at the point where the game calls the first transaction to our wallet APIs, we will detect that the player doesn't have a connected wallet, and then we overlay the MetaMask onboarding directly within the game itself using our overlay technology. So the user can actually sign up for a wallet at the point where they're trying to complete an action that's wallet related. And that allows us to delay the friction of onboarding to the latest possible point. We also want to do things with account abstraction, which I believe will ultimately prove a much better solution than custodial wallets, because one of the most important things about on-chain assets is the interoperability between dApps and game worlds. And so as a custodian, there are challenges where you can't allow the user to send to certain wallets that are not KYC'd, or you can't expose the wallet to a third-party smart contract or something. And so our goal is to get users on, like, speaking selfishly, like I want to onboard people to the decentralized web. I want gaming to be the bridge to bring 1 billion people into this, and I want it to change the world. Like I'm a gamer and I care about gaming, but like to me, this is about how do we make this something that's accessible to people and change the economic system of society. And I want to try to get us to that place.
Yeah, I think what Jacob said is super powerful, and I just wanted to like build on that. Like, definitely, like what Robbie said, you know, creating that bit of friction, and people do feel loyal to things that were difficult to get into. But if someone is already loyal to something else, you do want to make it a little bit smooth, like Jacob said. Like, I feel like there's a balance in between. Like, if we could merge those two ideas into one, it would be a perfect world. And yeah, like the beauty of abstraction is you can use it and things are flowing and simple, but then you're almost gradually, like you said, progressive onboarding, like just gradually learning almost to the point that you don't know you're learning, and then suddenly you're an expert. So I think it's a really powerful world.
I definitely think the theme of progressive onboarding, but like not hiding the crypto, is the key to all of this, right? It's like, and from a product side, right? Like if we're making a game, and at no point you know that you're in Web3, you're also not experiencing any of the benefits that are there. So it's like, why are you actually doing that? I think if the experience is high quality, people will come, right? Like I think a lot of people see all the negativity that gamers kind of talk about in terms of Web3, not liking it. The same thing happened with free-to-play. The same thing happened with mobile. Gamers are passionate. They love what they, kind of the space that they're in, and they love the experiences that they have. But they also hate change, because change typically hasn't been great for them. But like when you see a true Web3 experience, like when you've got things like Big Time and a few other games like that, their retention numbers are like insane. The rate of spending is insane, and the amount that they spend is like so high, like so much higher than Web2. So you can see there's something in the experience to where even if you do lose a couple of players, like let's say you lose 10, 20%, your numbers are still so much better than if you were just doing Web3, and there's clearly something in the experience. And I just think on the game design side, we have to get a little better at like educating them through either gameplay or like an in-app experience. Otherwise, like, you know, why are you doing it? What's the point?
Yeah, really great points. As a designer, I like doing this to people I work with, and some of them are here in the audience. How do you describe Web3 UX specifically from the perspective of your users?
Web3 gaming UX?
Yes.
Or I think that so and there's a range of challenges. So the first one is distribution. So game developers today are spending more of their time trying to hack around App Store policies than they are being able to build their game worlds. And so like we're being harassed by these monopolies like Apple and Steam, who have forced us into a situation where we're spending our time like figuring out weird ways to kind of get around the store policy. And so I think that's, I mean, I do believe it's one of the largest UX problems. And people don't usually think of it as a UX problem, but it actually is a UX problem. And then the next kind of layer is the wallet to game interaction. How do I carry my wallet into, how do I get onboarded into a wallet? And then once I have that wallet, how do I carry it between game worlds or carry it outside of game worlds to DeFi or to NFT marketplaces or anything like that? And then there's a range of like, how do my interactions using the wallet within the game world, how do those become really great? How do I make sure that what I'm doing, I'm actually consenting to? How do I make sure that my assets are easily discoverable, that I'm safe in using those assets? And so we kind of think of it as those three layers, and we try to unravel all of those and just go to work solving each UX problem in the stack for the user to make this more broadly accessible to people.
I think you hit the nail on the head there when it comes to distribution, because I think when we talk about games with respect to largely web games or PC games, we're really only talking about half the market at best. I mean, if you look at the Web2 game market by spend, and most of the world accesses the internet through mobile, so mobile is kind of the de facto platform. And so I think the most important example in my mind to look at is Hamster Combat, for any of you who've heard of it. Hamster Combat is the most successful game so far on the Telegram platform, or distributed on Telegram. And they have, as of, like 3 days ago, 239 million users. And we can debate the quality or humanity of those users till the cows come home. But fact remains, imagine if it's only 10% actual people. It's still more than anybody else in Web3 has, because they have access to actual unadulterated distribution. And so the problem is often not Web3, it's the monopolies holding us back.
Definitely on the point of the monopolies, like from even, you know, once you've onboarded a user from Web2 that's not like traditionally a Web3 user, they have no liquidity in this space, right? Like if you try and use the payment rails that we have today, most likely your card's gonna get declined, your bank's gonna call you and say, hey, what are you doing? Like we did a little experiment when we first started over at Shrapnel. We had quite a lot of the studio come in and try and onboard crypto using, like, you know, just a regular onboarding application, and almost all of them had their banks call them. And it's like, how do we expect any large-scale game, any large-scale production to come in and actually make revenues from non-traditional players, non-local players to Web3, if you can't even get money onto the platform? Like why? Like nobody's going to come in and target these folks if the app stores are making it so you have to go to third-party applications, and even if you do pay at that point, like there's like a 50% rejection rate. So I think beyond like the wallet experience and things of that nature, I think the infrastructure just has to start accepting that Web3 is not a scam. But I think it's a strange spot because it's also pushing people to do a lot of the not great Web3 practices, because that's the only place where you can get liquidity from in the current market, like on a mass scale.
Although I would just add one corollary to that, which is that phenomenon, which I totally recognize because I actually tried to move some crypto off of a Revolut yesterday. But that problem is particularly strong in Western countries and a lot less strong in the rest of the world.
You might.
No, I was just thinking about what you said about like scams and difficulty with like traditional systems, and it made me think, like earlier this week I was doing a lot of research about the very beginnings of blockchain currency, like Bitcoin and everything, and I went in this deep rabbit hole on Reddit regarding how people used to have to like actually send like wire transfers, or people's banks would call them when they were trying to buy Bitcoin, and they had to be like, even if it's a scam, I want to do this, it's my money. So it's like, how do you break free from the powers that be, like monopolies and big banks who don't want you to do this, because frankly then they won't be benefiting. It's like you have to like break the system somehow, and I don't know how we do that. I feel like someone here can solve that.
Ooh, challenge. Well, just looking at the time, we only have a few minutes left, and I feel like we always, I know, time goes by fast when we have a good time. So lastly, looking ahead, what impact on Web3 gaming UX would you all like to make? Maybe starting with, we'll go this way, starting with Jacob.
I thought you were starting from the other side. So, I mean, we've spoken a little bit about our overlay. The other UX thing that we're working on, and we actually announced this morning publicly, is that we are launching a new questing system inside of our overlay. So today, when you engage with Web3 quests, it's a separate website outside of the game. It basically incentivizes people who are not real players to go and try your game for a few seconds, get the quest reward, and then delete your game and go back to the questing website and claim the quest reward and drain the liquidity out of your game and ruin it. Sorry, this is a pretty harsh critique. So we've built a very different type of questing system. It allows the developer to build quests in our developer portal, and for those quests to appear both on a web platform, but also in our overlay while the player is in game. And as the player continues to engage the game and play the game, they can claim the quest rewards without ever leaving the context of the game. We're creating many different quest types that are basically biased towards long-term sustainability and user engagement and real value add to game worlds. And so we're trying to do everything we can to make it like super simple for game developers to make more immersive user experiences for the players, and to incentivize user acquisition, and to help to bring Web 2 players to Web 3. And a part of this is what we also shared this morning, is that we will be doing interesting things with the Steam API that allow game developers to target players based on their historical gaming reputation. And it is a way for us to incentivize a transition from Web 2 to Web 3, just like we spent 2021 vampire attacking each other. Let's use this kind of technology to incentivize people to come from Web 2 instead of sabotaging each other's protocols.
I think one other thing that we spend a lot of time looking at, we have something that is decentralized identity. So we created a community called the Mochaverse community, and created decentralized identities around that community identity, because we think it's really important that at a certain point, hopefully these identities can actually be something that regular users can understand in a more human way than a wallet per se, but actually what's behind that identity might be a wallet, and ideally a KYC'd persona, but one that can be private and owned by the user and behind that decentralized identity. Because the more people we get across Web3 into these identities, the easier it is for us as builders to be able to take those customers, because what we want in a perfect world is lots and lots of KYC'd customers. And so what we've done with the Mochaverse also is we've thought a lot about how we can be community members, because the point is not for us to have a monopoly on IDs. that's really antithetical to Web3. The point is, how do we interoperate with all the other people working on decentralized IDs? Because the faster we all sort of branch out and just onboard and KYC as many humans as possible, the better for all of us.
Yeah, I think one of the core problems, at least that we see, is like one, one of the best benefits of blockchain is the immutability. Once you've done something, it doesn't change. But also, if you've ever seen like customer service tickets, that's terrible. It's a recipe for disaster in the Web2 space. Like, we'd all like to believe here that we wouldn't make a mistake, but once you do, like, you can't undo it. So I think solving that problem in the blockchain space is going to be quite important, at least to onboarding the masses. Because even if one person out of 100, and it's probably going to be more than that, has a negative experience, they'll go tell someone else, and then they're learning about the key problems that Web3 has. I think the other side is, as a user, right? We've probably all clicked forgot password. You can't click forgot seed phrase. And also, if someone compromises you in any way, like with the fact there's no rollbacks or anything of that nature, like all of your assets, because that's why we have these wallets, can get drained and it's just gone. So I think those two things together, if someone can come up with a solution to that, I think us as a game would love to use it, and I think many Web2 users would actually be able to have confidence and comfortability getting in, because the main gaming market, like once mobile became a thing, is a lot of older people. Like, for example, Candy Crush is one of the most popular games in the world. Its top demographic is 40-plus-year-old women. I don't think they want to deal with seed phrases. I don't think they want to deal with immutability. So I think, to me, that's a core issue.
Yeah, I have to agree with what you said there. Like, solving for user experience and preventing people from making like a horrible, unreversible, irreversible mistake, like that seems to be a big key. And I think a lot of that, like, anyone who knows me knows I say this all the time, but I think a big key to that is content design and thinking through the actual words that you're using and not like bombarding people with terminology that they don't know. And you're like, I don't understand what this is supposed to mean anyway, so click, and then next thing you know, you're like, I'm drained. So you've got to figure out like a way to communicate with people in a more human way and match like the system that you're building with terms that they see in reality a lot, and then it becomes more intuitive to folks. And I think that that's something that like product design, content design, research, like we all team up on it, but it's something that I think every builder can start thinking, because like we're all humans, we all know what makes sense as a human being, and put yourself in those shoes when you're building and think like, is this logical? Yes, no, let's do it.
Just one more point. I think, Francis, you're absolutely right. One suggestion I have for this is, I think the Web3 solution to that is for somebody to take the role of, say, what a Visa or MasterCard does in a transaction, and that is to charge you to essentially provide insurance on your transaction and say, hey, when you're going and sending through that Ethereum payment, give me 3%, and whatever happens, I'll insure you that you can change your mind in 30 days, because that's what we pay Visa and MasterCard for anyway. So I feel like the solution is that there needs to be a financial services provider, hello, Visa and MasterCard, if you're in the room, to come and provide the Web3 industry with this infrastructure.
Perfect. I think we're completely out of time and over time. We don't have time for questions, do we? No? Okay. Well, you can find them. They'll be here. Thank you.